relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which our school board and schools are located. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that the Durham region forms a part of the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, the Mississauga peoples, and the treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation. It is on these ancestral and treaty lands that we teach, learn, and live. I'd like to call on Trustee Miller to introduce our entertainment this evening.
Today, we are excited to showcase the incredible talent of the Westney Heights Public School Concert Band and Choir through pre-recorded performances. The band and choir are conducted by Melissa Sawyer, intermediate music and grade 6 teacher, and accompanied by Samantha Smith, vice principal, librarian, and trumpet player, and Michael Houston, grade 2-3 teacher and tuba player. We are grateful to Principal Naima Thomas and the Westney Heights team who have helped prepare students in the concert band and choir to showcase their musical talents and teamwork. The first performance will be the concerts band version of O Canada, following by the choir's performance of This Is Me from The Greatest Showman. Please rise for O Canada.
That's one of my favorite songs, and it chokes me up every time. It's a song, actually a performance I saw at the World Games as well, at Special Olympics World Games in Abu Dhabi, and it just, as I said, it's one of my favorite songs. So on behalf of the entire Board of Trustees, we thank you, the students, staff at Westney Heights Public School for their work in preparing for this performance tonight. We hope that you will return in the future with even better music and performance that we can see, and just wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Edwards. Moving on in the agenda, are there any declarations of interest? And I'm seeing none. There are no declarations of interest at this time. Looking for a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda as distributed. Trustee Morton and seconder Trustee Miller. All in favor? That carries. I'm looking for a mover and a seconder to receive the approved revised minutes of January 22nd and approve the draft minutes of February 20th, February 28th, February 28th, the special board meeting, and the draft minutes of March the 4th, 2024. One motion, please. Trustee Arsenault, thank you. Seconder. Trustee Linton, all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion carries. I'd like to call on Director Camille Williams-Taylor now for the Ministry Memorandums Information Update. Director.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I hope staff, students, and families had a restful March break and were able to get outside and enjoy a little bit of the early spring weather. It seems the clock has turned back to a little bit more winter today, but spring is coming. On May the 30th, the Durham District School Board will hold its third annual Student Art Gallery, a district-wide art collection housed here at the Education Center, displaying artworks created and curated by students with staff support. From now until April 26th, students in grades 7 to 12 are encouraged to submit their artwork focused on the theme, My Journey, My Joy, My Genius. This theme invites students to delve into the rich tapestry of their personal experiences, exploring the diverse facets that have shaped them into the individuals that they are today. The Ministry of Education recently launched a new parent guide to Ontario's school system. This online resource will help parents, guardians, and caregivers to find information to support their child's success and to make informed decisions about their education. The topics include public education, specialized resources, and how to get involved. More information about this guide can be found on DDSB's social media posts or on the ministry website. Coming up this April, our early years team will launch the Great Beginnings webinar series for families with young children and those starting out in kindergarten. This 5-part series will cover a range of topics, including what a typical day in kindergarten looks like, learning through play, child well-being, and self-regulation. DDSB facilitators, community partners, and experts will share their knowledge and welcome questions. Thank you, and that concludes my update for this evening, Chair.
Thank you, Director. Are there any questions or comments for the Director? And I'm seeing none. We are now on item 8, public question period. Each question being asked this evening will be displayed on screen along with its response from staff. Questioners are reminded to ask only their approved question. We have allocated up to 30 minutes for public question period, and a timer will be visible for all participants. All approved questions, along with their corresponding answers from staff, will be posted on the Durham District School Board website following this meeting. All questions submitted for public question period will be shared with trustees following the meeting. I would first like to invite Dylan Reynolds to ask a question virtually, which will then be responded to by Associate Director Jim Markowski. It'll just take us a minute to get Dylan up there on the screen. Dylan, whenever you are ready.
Okay. All right, my question tonight is, back in May of last year, I asked a question about what does the DDSB do in the event of a heat warning due to an El Nino event that was to take place last summer. But now recently, the NOAA National and Atmospheric Administration recently issued a La Nina watch, which tends to increase the chances for more heat waves this summer than what we saw last summer. How would these heat waves impact the end of school activities and potentially into the start of next school year?
Thank you for your question, and good to see you this evening, Dylan. So I'll start off very similar to the information that was shared last year. The Durham District School Board has a document on extreme weather guidelines that is shared with schools as the warm weather approaches. Under Section 4.2, it states that the Durham Region Public Health gives local municipalities and community partners, such as the DDSB, early notification of extreme heat events through HWIS, which is a harmonized heat warning and information system for the province of Ontario. In the Durham region, HWIS has 2 heat alert levels. The first is for heat warnings that last up to 2 days, where temperatures are expected to be at least 31 degrees Celsius during the day and overnight temperatures are at least 20 degrees, or a humidex that reaches 40 degrees Celsius. The second is for extended heat warnings. The temperatures are similar to that of standard heat warnings, but the event lasts for more than 2 days. So in relation to your question, Dylan, when we receive these notifications, communication is sent out to schools to give attention to our extreme heat guidelines. And within the guidelines, there's specific actions that schools can take to support students and staff in such situations. And it's all laid out within the guidelines. Thank you.
Okay, guys, I hope everyone has a wonderful day. I'll see you guys on April 15th, 2024.
Thank you, Dylan. I would now like to invite Tegan Ostro to ask a question virtually, which will be responded to by Superintendent Georgette Davis. Tegan, whenever you're ready.
Chair Thatcher, I believe there's technical issues in the individual joining. I'll just read off the question on their behalf. The question is, how has the education system evolved over the years?
Thank you.
And thanks to Tegan for the question. The education system evolves as society evolves. The construction of the education system in the past was built on the best thinking at that time. Schools have always been in place to prepare students for adulthood and the various pathways that they embark on after graduation. This may include work, apprenticeship, post-secondary studies, or any other pathway that they choose. Over the years, the education system has shifted towards a more student-centered approach, focusing on individualized learning experiences tailored to students' needs and interests. This evolution has been driven by various factors, including advancements in educational psychology, research on effective teaching methods, and the recognition of the importance of catering to diverse learning styles and abilities. In the past, education was often characterized by a one-size-fits-all approach, where students were expected to conform to standardized curricula and teaching methods. However, as our understanding of how students learn best has grown, there's been a move towards personalized learning experiences that empower students to take ownership of their education. Overall, the evolution of the education system reflects a shift towards putting students at the center of the learning process, empowering them to become active participants in their own education, and equipping them with the skills they need to succeed in our classrooms, workplaces, and communities. So as we see in other fields such as medicine, we're becoming more precise in order to meet the needs of society. This means we're focused on preparing students for the world that we currently live in and the possibilities to come. The education system prioritizes the development of critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and digital literacy, collectively known as 21st century skills, to better prepare students for success in an increasingly complex and interconnected world, because we can quickly access academic knowledge and data through online search engines and social media. Technology has played a significant role in the evolution of the education system, providing new tools and resources to support personalized learning. From online learning platforms to educational apps and interactive multimedia resources, technology has made it possible to individualize instruction and provide students with opportunities for self-directed learning. Emergent technologies require us to continually reflect and respond so that our students can thrive. Innovative education is all about learning and acknowledging individual pathways and possibilities so that all students have access to quality educational opportunities, regardless of race, gender, or identity.
Thank you, Superintendent Davis. That concludes our question period for this evening. So moving on in the agenda to item 9, and I'd like to call on Vice Chair Deb Oldfield for the report from the Committee of the Whole in camera.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. The Committee of the Whole met this evening in closed session, March 18th, 2024, and discussed matters involving decisions in respect of negotiation with employees of the board, litigation affecting the board, and administrative transfers and placements. Chair Thatcher, this is my report, and I move the following motion: that the board approve the actions and adopt any resolutions of the March 18, 2024 Committee of the Whole closed session meeting.
Thank you. Looking for a seconder. Trustee Edwards. All in favor? Motion carries. I'd like to go on then to Director Camille Williams-Taylor for the good news from the system. Director?
Thank you, Chair. And with the cooperation of our technology, we're hoping to bring to you just a brief glimpse into some of the good news items from across the district. So I'll turn it over to our comms team to let it roll.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of DDSB students and staff, we're happy to bring you good news from across the system. In partnership with the North Oshawa Lions Club Coronation and Kedron Public School students have been participating in the International Peace Poster Contest for many years. This year, grade 8 students Asmitha Rajesh and Shaima Khan were recognized for their exceptional visual talent, creating posters which communicated the theme Dare to Dream, which represents how they'll turn their dream of a peaceful future into reality. Congratulations, Asmitha and Shaima.
For the second year in a row, students of all abilities participated in the Inclusive Skills Baking Competition. Hosted at Uxbridge Secondary School, students in the Practical Learning Program at various high schools brought their smiles and A game for a fun day and some friendly competition. Students were paired up with culinary arts students to practice kitchen safety, measuring, baking, and decorating. After their hard work in the kitchen, every student was presented with a medal and a certificate of excellence.
Students at Sunset Heights Public School were excited to be joined by Echo Namako, an amazing artist who creates enchanting artworks using black Lego pieces. Echo emphasized the importance of seeing oneself represented in art, and that with Lego you can build any world you want, especially in an inclusive one. His Lego sculptures include African gods and goddesses, wild-style graffiti, and West African kingdoms. Catches are at the annual Nuit Blanche event and currently at the on-site gallery. A student at Lincoln Alexander Public School is doing a food drive to support Muslim families during Ramadan. His purpose is to ensure families less fortunate have food to celebrate after their fast. The Muslims Educators Network of Durham, MEND, and members of the DDSB Muslim Student Associations organized their inaugural Ramadan market on March 2nd at J. Clark Richardson. The event featured 50 local vendors, where thousands of students and families were offered treats, art, and cultural items. On February 28th, staff and students across the board wore pink to show support for Pink Shirt Day. The goal of Pink Shirt Day is to continue fostering acceptance and allyship among school community members and enhance awareness of harmful effects of bullying at school. Pink Shirt Day originated in 2007 when 2 Canadian students took a stand against bullying rooted in homophobia by wearing pink shirts to school. Blairidge Public School featured a kindness garden on their bulletin board, and kindergarten classes at Green Bank Public School shared messages of kindness all month. Thank you to everyone who participated. The last week in February once again marked Rivalry Week for Anderson, CVI, and Henry Street High School. As they bayed for the Mayor's Cup, students hyped up their peers in pep rallies, and the student athletes competed in basketball, volleyball, and hockey games. In the end, Henry Street High School came out on top to win the cup. Congratulations to all the student athletes who played their hearts out in the 2024 Rivalry Week. The biannual For Art's Sake exhibition showcases the artistic talent of students in the DDSB. The exhibition premiered on February 29th at the Robert McLaughlin Art Gallery in Oshawa. There were impressive student musical performances at the opening enjoyed by many. The amazing students' art was featured at the gallery until March 17th. Well done to all the student artists. Families and community partners at Fallingbrook Public School celebrated an evening of cultural identity with over 200 participants. There were performances, presentations, and activities throughout the school where students could learn about the different cultures that make up Fallingbrook Public School. Henna designs, a book nook, an appearance from local artist Chrissy Wysotsky, and free barber services from Bartley Skills were all part of the fun-filled evening. Congratulations to Pringle Creek Public School Grade 8 student Yasmin Borjak, who was awarded the Celebrating Youth Award. The town of Whitby awarded Yasmin for her unwavering commitment to her community. Yasmin's neighbors say she's a positive role model for younger peers. We are very proud. Valerie Hodawansky, a fashion and sewing teacher at Brooklyn High School, emphasizes the importance of teaching basic sewing skills alongside sustainability in her curriculum. The program spans grade 9 to 12, gradually developing students' abilities in creative upcycling projects. Projects include tote bags, stuffed animals, and transforming old jeans into various fashion items. The next goal will be to work on upcycling formal dresses. As you can see, the dates of significance take us to the next board meeting.
Thank you to Alyssa from Eagle Ridge Public School and Milana from Highbush Public School for reading this month's good news.
Moving on to item 11 on the agenda, under recommended actions, and I'll call on Vice Chair Deb Oldfield for the report and adoption of any resolutions from the Standing Committee meeting of March the 4th.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, I have 2 motions this evening. Firstly, I move that the board adopt the resolutions of the March 4th Committee of the Whole closed session meeting.
Seconder, Trustee Edwards. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
So the next one is, there are minutes of the March 4th, 2024 Standing Committee meeting. They're attached at pages 37 to 42. And the following motions were carried and the resolutions adopted: that staff prepare an information report on modified school year calendars as soon as possible for trustee consideration at a standing committee meeting, and that the chair write an open letter to the Minister of Education seeking a change to the education development charge cap, which was established in 2019, emphasizing the growth in Durham and the negative impact of the cap on our financial position. I move that the board approve the minutes of March 4th, 2024 and adopt the resolutions above.
Thank you, Trustee Oldfield. Looking for a seconder. Trustee Morton. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you. I'd like to move on now to item 11B, which is a motion that came from a standing committee meeting as a notice of motion. The committee recommended that it come to this board meeting this evening for discussion and hopefully for approval of the Board of Trustees. And this was done due to the short timeline that is required here. I'm going to call on Trustee Donna Edwards to put forward the OPSPA policy resolution. And I'm going to pass the gavel to Vice Chair Deb Oldfield.
Thank you. Every year, OPSPA puts out a call for calls for policy or bylaw resolutions, constitutional changes. Based on a certain few reports that have come forward, I'm asking that the board look at this particular resolution around accessibility to move it to pass on to OPSPA to consider, because it's considered at the OPSPA annual general meeting, which will be held in July. The Accessibility for Ontario Act was first introduced in 2005, and even though it's been around since 2005, there has the fourth reviewer, and as noted, the Accessibility Act has to be reviewed every 3 years, noted that when doing the legislative review of AODA, the outcomes were poor. Outcomes of AODA is poor, including the health and education system. Enforcement does not exist. The entire enforcement branch of AODA consists of about 25 people, and that's for the entire province to look at policies, enforcement, and you name it, everything to do with AODA. Data and research is limited or does not exist. Basic leadership does not exist. There's a lack of urgency to get accessibility rights addressed, and there's a lack of harmonization between that leads into inefficiencies and confusing processes. Nobody owns the actual outcomes, and there's no accountability. Simply filling out a checklist does not advance accessibility. The lack of public knowledge compounds the ability to hold organizations accountable. All students have a right to an education under the Education Act. The Human Rights Code prohibits acts of discrimination of people under protected grounds, of which disability is one of the protected grounds. As trustees, we are responsible to ensure that we provide an education system that is accessible to all. The fourth review actually recommends that the federal Ontario government to coordinate a quality standard tied to funding. He recommends developing a panel of people with disabilities to consult on priorities, issues impacting accessibility. Does this kind of sound familiar? If you remember, Accessibility K-12 Education Standard Development Committee made a final recommendation report, and it was submitted to the government in the first quarter of 2022. And you'll read some of those very same recommendations. Again, the final report for the K-12 has basically sat, and very little action has ensued. As accessibility and education is a right, and the fourth review is asking the government to address leadership and accountability, I'm asking that the Board of Trustees put forward a motion to our Provincial Trustee Association, OPSPA, to take ownership of addressing accessibility barriers in the public education system. The motion that I have drafted is it be resolved that OPSA take a leadership role in addressing accessibility barriers for students and their families in the public education system by endorsing, in principle, the recommendations of the 4th Legislative Review of AODA, review the recommendations of the 4th legislation to identify how OPSPA can become a leader and a role model to address accessibility barriers in the public education system and in the missed opportunities. And to basically to be accountable and ensure that where applicable and where possible, OPSPA address and advocate for the elimination of accessibility barriers in public education, where it responds or submits, when it responds or submits to the government or the Ministry of Education through public consultation. I've changed the wording slightly from what is written, but it's the same context. It just read a little bit better. Thank you.
Thanks. So just to be clear, this is a motion. I just want to make sure that we're passing the right motion here, because we're moving that the DDSB put forward the following motion and then that motion that's on page 46. So I want to make sure it's worded correctly and that we're not saying be it resolved at OPSPA, because we're not OPSPA. Yeah. So and you can, what we're asking, that the DDSB put forward the following motion at OPSPA's AGM, and then as it reads on page 46.
Yes, and it is that to be resolved that OPSPA take leadership role. That's part of the motion.
It's part of the motion, but but that we put forward.
We're putting that motion, yes. And it will be considered. It's a motion that gets put on the table. The executive looks at it, and they look at it and they provide it to the board of directors, right. And then it goes to the AGM for them to discuss and pass if they should choose or amend or if they so choose.
Are we clear? I just want to make sure that we've got the motion down correctly. Is everybody clear on the motion? Sorry, go ahead.
Trustee Edwards, if you don't mind to repeat it, I didn't record all of the changes from what's in the agenda.
Can we maybe get it with the preamble as well that I've included, and maybe possibly get it up on the screen because it's lengthy? Thanks. So the preamble would be that the DDSB put forward the following motion at OPSPA.
Mm-hmm. That's correct, and the leadership role in addressing accessible barriers for students, and that part is basically in the public system. What I did change is endorse, instead of endorsing, endorse in principle the recommendations in the 4th legislative review.
Okay, hang on, let's say it's, so it's endorse?
Endorse in principle, which was there before. Mm-hmm. The recommendations, and to be quite clear, in the 4th legislative review of the AODA. Okay, that one's there.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the second one is, and says, instead of reviewing the missed opportunities and recommendations, I've got review the recommendations in the 4th legislative review to identify how OPSPA can become a leader and role model to address accessibility barriers in the public education system and any missed opportunities.
Okay, to identify how OPSPA can become a leader. Okay. Is this correct, Trustee Edwards?
Can become a leader and a role model in addressing the missed opportunities, and address accessible barriers. Accessibility barriers in the public education system and missed opportunities. Accessibility barriers and missed opportunities in the public. Yeah, that's fine. And then the last part is to be accountable. Ensure that. So I've just added, this is the accountability piece. that where applicable and where possible, I think they have that, OSPA address and advocate for the elimination of accessibility barriers in public education when it responds or submits responses to the government or the Ministry of Education during public consultations. Yes, to ensure, yeah. Be accountable to ensure that. Ms. Runs of the government, Ministry of Education during public consultation. I think that to respond or submit response to, I think the accessible barriers are before. To identify how OPSPA can become, identify that where applicable and where possible, OPSPA addresses and advocates for the elimination of accessibility barriers. I'm moving it before that, the first part, in public education, when it responds to the government or the Ministry of Education during public consultations. That's it. Yeah, barriers. Barriers. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah,
Okay, we're good?
we're good, thank you.
Is there, hopefully there's a after all that, hopefully there's a seconder for this.
Yeah, hopefully there is a seconder to that.
Is there a seconder? Trustee Miller? If you want to put your hand up, because otherwise chatting behind me is not helping me. So if there's a question, it's seconded, so if, at this point, it would be a revision, an amendment to the motion. Trustee Morton.
I'm just curious because I think we need to be grammatically correct. So when I'm looking at the forward and it says, and their families in the public education system by endorse and by review, it really should be by endorsing and reviewing. And I think it's important that we have the correct grammar. Sorry.
Any objection to that revision? It's not changing the motion itself, it's just better grammar, I would think. No objections? That's fine. It's been seconded. All those, any conversations other than grammatical changes? Any comments? Trustee Miller?
As a school board trustee and as an advocate for accessible education, I'm also in support of this motion whereby Ontario Public School Board Association take proactive steps towards implementing the latest recommendation by Accessibility for Ontario with the, Accessibility for Ontario with Disabilities Act. By taking this decisive action, the Ontario Public School Board can contribute to creating an inclusive educational landscape that cherishes the diversity of all students. Together, we can champion the removal of barriers and education for all students.
Trustee Pinello?
Sorry, Chair, through you. Just in the name of grammar, I think the last bullet would also have to be amended by to be accountable is not. So maybe by being accountable and ensuring that. And then I did have a question to the mover.
Okay, before you ask the question, I'm just going to ask if there's any objections to that grammatical change. Seeing none, okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. My only question to the mover is, are we putting forth an additional point or requirement that OPSPA, I understand the being accountable, so I'm talking about the last point again, but I'm wondering if we want to add teeth to this in OPSPA actually measuring in some capacity whether or not the ministry actually responds, because I think this is important, but if there's not something that, 6 months, a year from now, we're going to come back and OPSPA will say, here's what we put forward, here's what hasn't happened, this is how we measured it. I just don't want us to repeat the same processes over and over. So I have more of a question to Trustee Edwards on that.
And I understand about being accountable and doing the measurability, but again, this motion is going towards the Board of OPSPA, and then it's up to OPSPA, when I say in reviewing the recommendations and the legislative review, as far as in how they can be, they're going to have to determine, OPSPA themselves are going to have to look at the thing and make recommendations in the end and look at the accountability, but to be accountability, from my point at this point in time, is that they have to ensure that their all their correspondence is reviewed. That's their accountability as OPSPA, but what they decide to do with this recommendation after they review the report, that's up to OPSPA to determine, the Board of Directors to determine. So think of it as a motion coming forward, and it is OPSPA and the OPSPA staff and how they determine how they're going to set this up to become a leader and a role model from that forward. So this is just, as I said, again, just to ensuring that they themselves put accessibility at the forefront to ensure that we have accessible education, because from a provincial standpoint, nobody is really accountable. It's a mixture of. So I understand the question, but we can't assign that. OPSPA themselves, the Board of Directors, have to determine the accountability piece, because this is just a policy or motion to go to them to do it, and then they have to do it.
Seeing no further questions. Oh, Trustee Thatcher?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I did have the opportunity to read through some of the fourth AOD legislative review recently, and I firmly believe that this is a worthwhile proposal policy for consideration at the 2024 OPSPA AGM. I believe it actually should be a priority. It affects, as was mentioned in the report, 2.9 million Ontarians with disabilities, which doesn't include those of our aging population. The 2.9 million Ontarians with disabilities constitutes 22% of the population in Ontario. There are a few concerns outlined in the report, but to me, the priorities are primarily accountability and funding. I believe there is an urgency for change, and yes, I believe that this is a crisis. I certainly agree with that, so I'm fully supporting this motion.
Trustee Pinello.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Thank you, Trustee Edwards. I don't disagree that OPSPA needs to establish it. I think I do disagree with that. It shouldn't be in here in some capacity. I think us asking for them to establish a framework within which to hold the ministry and government to account is an important part of it, because it's something that then all trustees can look too and understand that this is going to be the process. Like, as they're developing and endorsing the principles and reviewing the recommendations and being accountable themselves, they are also going to create something out of it that's very clearly outlined. So we can't tell them what that framework looks like, but I think in asking for it to be developed is an important part of this, so that there's an action item attached that we would like to see for their consideration when they're looking at the actual motion. So I just wanted to clarify my earlier comment. Thank you.
And just to be clear, Trustee Pinello, that's a question or you're making an amendment?
Thank you, Chair. Happy to make the amendment, I suppose, that perhaps we add a bullet at the end that reads, by developing and implementing a framework within which OPSBA will or can hold the Ministry of Education and government to account. Period. Thank you.
And I am going to treat this as an amendment, so that's a motion to move that amendment. Do I have a seconder? Trustee Litton? Any questions, comments on the motion, discussion? Trustee Edwards?
And again, I'm not sure how, because we're saying we're asking them to develop and implement a framework, but we don't know what that framework is or what those recommendations can be. I'm just thinking of an example of where an example of the Coalition for Mental Health was developed, and it was a working group that was set up separately, independently, and it had sort of to develop, and is now an organization that is basically relied upon by the government and is seen as a huge resource. An advisory group provides resources and so forth, and it's separate of the government. As well as the fact that within the report itself, they actually talk about setting up a separate agency as well, but this is particular around around public education. And by putting this motion forward, OPSBA themselves as a board of directors are basically accountable to their members around the table to report back on the particular motions and so forth. So the way that reads, it reads somewhat a defining what the framework, not saying that it's not accountable, but they have to be reportable back to the members of OPSBA. And I'm not sure if we would get buy-in for that particular section at this point in time. At the board meeting, if it was there, presented as a board as an amendment, which we could do even as part of the board, I could see it maybe doing there, but after discussion, but not at this meeting at this point in time.
Seeing no further questions on the amendment, we're going to vote now on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment? Those are X's. All those in favor? Opposed? That's defeated. So back to the original motion. If there are no further questions on the original motion, all those in favor? Don't be shy, raise your hand or put them up high enough I can see. Those opposed? It's carried.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, excuse me. Moving on to item 12 on the agenda, under information items, and I'd like to call on Superintendent Mohammed Hamid to update us with respect to the Math Achievement Action Plan.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. The report can be found on page 47 of your package. The Durham District School Board's Math Achievement Action Plan for the 2023-2024 academic year represents a pivotal initiative aimed at elevating math education learning system-wide. In this report, we present an update of the progress made in implementing the action plan, showcasing collaborative efforts spanning from system administrative levels through the whole school to individual classrooms. Our overarching objective remains steadfast: to cultivate a learning environment where all students can excel in mathematics, supported by equitable access to high-quality instruction and personalized interventions tailored to their unique needs. One notable advancement lies in our commitment to ongoing professional learning. Through a diverse array of resources, including innovative support models, additional qualification courses, and communities of practice, we're empowering educators to deepen their content knowledge and refine their pedagogical approaches in mathematics and embrace the joy of numbers. By fostering a culture of continuous improvement and providing targeted coaching and mentoring opportunities, we're equipping educators with the tools and support they need to deliver effective instruction and maximize student learning outcomes. Moreover, our dedication to personalized support for students is exemplified through the implementation of individualized intervention plans. By systematically analyzing student work in math, we're able to develop tailored strategies that address specific learning needs and foster mathematical growth. Through collaborative efforts involving educators, support staff, coaching staff, and school teams, we're creating a supportive, thriving, joyful ecosystem where every student feels empowered to succeed in mathematics. As we forge ahead, our commitment to equity and inclusivity remains unwavering. By prioritizing personal support, ongoing professional learning, and collaborative partnerships, we're laying a solid foundation for enhancing mathematics education across the district. Together, we're building a brighter future where every student has the opportunity to thrive and succeed in math, regardless of background or ability. This report is provided to trustees for information, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Superintendent Hamid. Do trustees have any questions or comments? Trustee Morton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I have a comment and I also have a question. I really appreciate the statement as is. They also cultivate a supportive and inclusive classroom environment where students feel empowered to take risks, make mistakes, and engage in productive struggle. Very important. But I also think it's key that with the challenges that we present, it has to be fun. Our students must look forward to coming to math class. My question, at what grade level do we expect the teacher to have math qualifications?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. While there isn't a mandated expectation specifically in elementary classrooms, there is a strength in having math qualifications as we move into the intermediate grades and forward at that point. We do offer AQ courses that are subsidized by the ministry to offer the opportunity for educators K-12 to have mathematic specialization and to increase their comfort in, as you said, creating that joyful learning experience.
Student Trustee Kayla Hoare.
Thank you, and thank you for this report. I had a question about the Education Perfect digital tool, and if trustees could be provided with more info about its functionality and the implementation within the schools, or where we could find this information ourselves, because I would love to understand more about it. Thank you.
Not a problem.
Thank you. Trustee Edwards.
Thank you. And as I read priority action around number 3, around knowing mathematical learner and ensuring mathematical tasks, interventions, and supports are relevant and responsive, I'm just wondering, what does that look like in the secondary panel, where some of our secondary learners might be still learning some of basic math? And what does that look like in that panel and that action plan?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. So this comes out of the strengthening of the student success model in the secondary panel. So we have worked with secondary schools through Superintendent Nevels and System Lead Monique Muller to look at student success systems that are in place in the secondary school and think about the student success process by which we're bringing students into that space, identifying what their learning needs, as you had said, and then being able to be more precise in exactly how we then capitalize on that to provide them with learning opportunities and as a conduit for learning to have them reach their full potential. So it's a specific personalized program that comes out of the evolution of the student success model. Does that help to answer that question?
Yeah, yes, it does. And in particular, I'm looking at, the success of a student, where they come with a particular math success in an elementary panel, and ensuring that continued success goes and expands at the secondary level. So then transition is a really key on knowing where the student is coming from. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Trustee Linton.
Thank you, and for you, Chair. Just wanted, for priority action number 1, if you were to simplify that, how would it read?
Sorry, Trustee Linton.
So, ensuring fidelity of curriculum implementation and use of instructional assessment practices with a proven track record of enhancing student achievement. So I was just wondering, if you were to say, I don't understand what that means, how would you define that for me?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Really, that priority action is to be able to understand really the manner in which the curriculum is constructed K-12, and thinking about the key underlying principles within the curriculum, and then being able to have students reach the outcomes and the goals through the delivery of the curriculum in a way that's personalized by the specific instructional and assessment practices that are really rooted in who the students are. So understanding the curriculum, humanizing the learning environment. Remember that 3 graphic that we have? It's actually in your package, and then being able to then center the student in that in the decision making.
Trustee Morton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I'm really curious to know about de-streaming in grade 9. We've done it for a period of time. Are we able now to reflect on that and decide these are advantages and these maybe could be considered disadvantages of de-streaming? What are your thoughts?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I think we're still early in the stages of understanding the de-streaming process. We do have de-streaming coaches who are working in schools right now to really begin to think about the pedagogical shifts that are happening in classrooms. It is an evolution. There is, when you center the learning around the students, there is most definitely benefits around that. And so it is a process to begin to think about the fidelity of curriculum that needs to happen in a de-streamed environment. But we are hopeful that we will begin to see the interruption of streaming, hence the de-streaming, as an outcome of the idea of the de-streaming process, if that makes sense. I know it's a little convoluted, but that's what we're working towards.
Seeing no further questions, thank you, Superintendent Hamid. Moving on then to item 12B, and we'll call on Associate Director David Wright for the quarterly construction and major projects progress report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, it's my pleasure to be joined this evening by Lisa Bianca, Head of Facility Services, who will be presenting the report.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I'm pleased to share with you an update on construction and development activities since our last report in January. We continue to see good progress in the construction of our capital priorities projects, with construction of the Beaver River Public School project and unnamed North Oshawa PS reaching their milestones throughout the winter and remaining on schedule for 2024 September openings. Progress has also been made on the Mary Street Community School site for the replacement addition, with the site works and the building structure now completed. Work continues at both Vaughan Willard Public School for the 2-room childcare expansion and accompanying 2-classroom addition, as well as at Scott Central for the 3-room childcare addition. Both projects anticipate a spring completion. The unnamed North Oshawa Secondary School has been submitted to the Ministry for approval to proceed. Once that is received, we will proceed into the tender phase for that project. Unnamed Pickering Seton Public School is well along in municipal approvals. ATP submission is imminent, and following the recent completion of the site purchase, final geotechnical investigations were undertaken. Approval to proceed for the unnamed Coghlan Public School is with the ministry as well, and municipal approvals are proceeding well for the site located in Ajax. Childcare projects at Vaughan Willard and Scott Central are well along, with work being completed this spring. Seneca Trail has received building permit approval and construction has begun. Just to wrap up, our 2023-2024 renovation and improvement projects tendering process is continuing, and although market increases do remain challenging, we continue to develop projects that are utilizing our funding and achieving the greatest impact to further DDSB strategic goals and priorities. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Trustee Oldfield.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I have a question. As you know, the provincial government has told us that they've streamlined the process for capital priorities projects, specifically new school builds. And I'm curious if we are in a position to be able to know if that's the case with any of our projects, and if we are in a position to know that, if in fact it is actually more of an expedited process, and if we're seeing builds being approved more quickly.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Unfortunately, we don't know yet. Reason being, all of these projects were approved under the old system. The new streamlined process will be applied to any capital priorities that we receive, hopefully this spring. So it was the 2023 submission process that was streamlined and changed. We are hopeful that it will carry forward, but until we receive those allocations, we won't know how much speedier it is.
Trustee Edwards. Trustee Edwards.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm glad to see that that we've had sort of progress with the city of with the town of Ajax as far as that's concerned. In that site. But again, you know, I'm curious of timelines. Is that you did say that we've had approval to proceed to tender has been submitted, and I'm just wondering as far as when it was turned, just to track timelines, if it's going to be approval, because they said they were going to, part of this approved process, they will, you know, turn around things like ATPs quicker.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I do know that our capital priorities analyst is working diligently on our submission. We receive multiple questions a day as they clarify and prepare their package to go to the minister for approval. Unfortunately, I can't speak to timeline. That's purely in the ministry's hands at this point. But there is a recognition of delay and timeline, and we know they are working diligently.
Trustee Edwards, supplemental.
It's just an additional sort of clarification when I'm looking at major projects and change room or renovation on Dumbarton. I'm just curious, project is under investigation. What does that particularly mean? Is it just being sort of itemized on what is to be done?
Thank you, and through your chair. Under investigation, it sounds very, serious. In this context, it means that we're looking at the, structural capabilities, the building, the, infrastructure that's there. So just basically investigating the site to make sure that we can do what the best project possible.
Just a quick question around the capital priority submissions. Did I hear you say spring? Because I was under the impression that some of those would be out in the winter.
Thank you. As you know, we're still waiting, and winter's coming to a close. So we are hopeful that it is imminent, but again, it's one of those things that's purely in the ministry's hands. Lots of many rumors in various circles. So we have our fingers crossed for hopefully not too long. That's unfortunately all we can say at this point.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any further questions or comments, so I'll call on, is it Trustee Edwards? Will you be presenting the SEAC report this evening? Okay, whenever you're ready.
Did put a separate sheet of paper here, but I can't seem to find it. But anyways, so I'll go from recollection as that. The actual minutes of the January 18th advisory committee can be found in your package. It's starting on page 70. And I just wanted to make a couple of highlights in that. Again, we want to congratulate our chair, Eva Karakides, who's the chair, as well as Tara Cully is the vice chair of SEAC. During that meeting, the Superintendent Aaron Elmhurst and the literacy team presented the DDSB literacy plan, and SEAC members had opportunity to ask questions. We also had Superintendent Heather Monday and Lisa Coppin, Senior Manager of People and Culture, came in and got clarification around the accessible customer service policy. Members did provide some feedback, and basically they were concerned that when a policy is removed, that people might not necessarily be looking for accessibility and human rights, and that we don't want to create additional barriers for people to find information around accessibility. And if somebody does a search, and they did comment on the existing functionality of the website, but I'll leave that as it may, and just saying that if they did do a search, that they would hope that when it comes to accessibility, the human rights accessibility procedure would come up first in line. We also had some other discussions, but one of the things that the SEAC is looking at, there was a discussion around transportation, particular accessibility and public transportation. The SEAC is looking at writing a letter to Durham Region Transit about the trials and issues around accessibility and transportation for our students. And I think that's generally what I was going to say. That's my report. Thank you.
Any questions for Trustee Edwards? Seeing none? I'm moving on then to the OPSPA report. Will you be presenting the OPSPA report tonight, Trustee Edwards?
We had provided one at standing as far as the OPSPA report was concerned, and nothing has occurred since then to report. Thank you.
Okie doke. Thank you. So at the back of our agenda, we have the days of significance. And as there is no further business, I will adjourn this meeting.